On behalf of Alarmel Valli, Dipasikha Dance Foundation, Alliance Francaise of Madras, and Alap, I, Akhila Krishnamurthy, extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you. Wild Women is an anthology of sacred poetry, and in it, Arundhathi Subramaniam so beautifully weaves together haunting voices of, by, and for women from across the Indian subcontinent. I'd now like to invite on stage Bharatanatyam artist and Padma Bhushan awardee Alarmel Valli to welcome you all and say a few words.
Thank you all for being here today. Arundhathi is not just a poet and writer whom I enormously admire, but I've had the joy and the privilege of collaborating with her very often on productions of poetry and dance. She has often been a muse, opening my eyes to new vistas, exciting new possibilities. She is a fellow seeker, though far ahead of me on this path. And above all, she is a dear friend, someone who touched my late mother and me with her unswerving integrity, her thoughtfulness, her unique grace, and her generosity of spirit. And having known her for all these decades, I can honestly say that it is very rare to come across someone of her prodigious gifts and her eminent stature who's so completely without pretension or arrogance. First, I'd like to thank my dear Arundhathi for having given me, and this is not an empty cliche, for having given Dipasikha the pleasure and the privilege, truly, of being able to participate in the launch of this wonderful anthology, Wild Women.
Thank you, Valli, for all those kind words. We thought it would be appropriate to begin this evening with some music. And we're so excited that Chennai-based playback singer, independent musician, co-founder of the Madras Mehfil, which is really a music collective that brings together an array of genres, semi-classical, classical, bhajans, ghazals, Sufi music, and a very, very dear friend of mine, Vandana Srinivasan, has come on board. And Vandana spent a few weeks soaking in the poetry of Wild Women. And this evening, she will share with us an interpretation of a couple of poems through music.
Zani sange sarva loka.
And now it's time for the book launch. May I please invite on stage Bombay Jayashriji, the star of the evening, Arundhathi Subramaniam, Alarmel Valli, to please come on stage and we will formally launch the book. Could get a picture with all the three of you holding the book, yeah.
Today I'll be presenting one of the poems that we immediately, both of us said, has to be a part of this production. Yelina Vaadu Tanu. It's a delightful poem, but it begins with Alamelu Manga, a person who's supremely confident about her relationship with Lord Venkateshwara and his adoration for her. So she is exultant, provocative, tongue-in-cheek, and smug in turn, as she feigns self-deprecation and adopts a teasing, playful mock humility in the company of her friends.
Yelina vaadu tanu ye managalane Yelina vaadu tanu ye managalane Yelina vaadu tanu ye managalane పోలించితానన్ను
wild women. There are many ways to talk about the beginnings of books, and there are many dishonest ways of doing it, and those are very useful. I'm going to start with one possible entry point into this book. I wanted to read of women with bodies. I wanted to read of women with blood. I wanted to read of women with hungers, with hormones, with appetites, with an appetite for life and an appetite for deeper life. To me, that's what the spiritual journey is about. That's how this book began to take shape. The women in this book are diverse. I started with a very modest number. I started with 20-odd women mystic poets of the subcontinent. Gradually, that expanded to about 25, and it eventually swelled to 56 women, and several other women in this book will touch you as deeply too.
Whether it's, Avayar or Akka Mahadevi or Lalde, the body is seen really as a trap. But either in casting away the body or in wanting to fulfill the desire of it in its entirety, these are women who are extremely bold. Talk to us a bit about body in the context of sacred poetry.
I think I believed, Akhila, that a spiritual journey was about turning into this tranquil being, and I wished I could sidestep the body in the process until I realized, and the poets reminded me of this again and again, that there is no way to make a journey home without acknowledging the body. And in the finest poems, the poets tell us that the body is an instrument, not an impediment. That the body is the basis of the journey, not a barrier to this journey. And to me, when I read the poems, if you turn away from the hagiography and you turn to the poetry is full of clues. You have an 18th century poet like Avude Akkal who raises questions about menstruation, about saliva. She says, what is it that makes these impure? She says, the very child is born of the intermingling of the bodily fluids of two parents. Is the child also impure? In which case, all of creation is impure. She says, the first sound is yetchel. Saliva is impure. The first sound is yetchel. The first form is yetchel. The Vedas are yetchel. All of creation is yetchel. If these are the parameters that we adopt. So these are poets who are asking us resonant questions that sound crazy, irreverent, wild even today. And they are questions that I do believe need to be asked because they don't allow us to settle for easy orthodoxies.
Could you talk a little bit about the role of the man in this whole thing?
I mean, the men are deeply invited into the poems, I think. This is not in any way about being antagonistic in any sense. It's not a male versus female any more than it is flesh versus spirit. I think the problem is that we live in a conceptually fragmented world that would have us believe that these are at loggerheads. But the finest poems remind us that the material and the metaphysical are not at war, that the two sexes are not engaged in a battle, but in fact, when it is seen as a festival, and we are now in the presence of spring, we're on the banks of the Yamuna, it's moonlit, nothing stays the way it is. The man, who is the man? The woman, where is the woman? You don't know where one ends and the other begins. That's why Uddhava Das says, who can tell who is the man and who is the woman in this ecstasy? This is where sexual union becomes such a powerful metaphor for mystical union. And I think to see it as just one or the other is to miss the point. Yeah. If we rob it of its sensuality, we've lost something. If we rob it of its sublimity, we've certainly lost something. Kabir puts it the best. He says, if I call it one, it isn't so. If I call it two, it's sacrilege. Kabir says, as it is, so it is. I think that's where we're being invited.